All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating idea called the heliocentric theory. Now, that name is a mashup of heliocentric, our sun-centered solar system, and eccentric, because our orbit isn't a perfect circle. And this theory suggests there's a kind of ghost in our calendar, a huge error in how we track time that might just explain a whole lot about the world we're living in right now.
So let's just start with a feeling. I think we all know it. That stretch of time around the holidays and into the new year, why does it so often feel kind of crazy? That mix of super high energy, a little bit of anxiety, and then boom, total exhaustion.
Well, what if that feeling isn't just about family stress or too much sugar? The theory we're digging into today says it's actually a symptom of a massive 2,000-year-old glitch in our collective operating system, a cosmic error we've all been living by without even knowing it.
To even begin to understand what that error is, we have to do a quick recap of the standard story. The version of our planet's trip around the sun that we all got taught back in science class.
So you definitely know this part. The Earth is tilted. It's leaning over about 23.5 degrees. And that tilt is why we have seasons. It's all about whether the northern or southern hemisphere is leaning into the sun. Pretty straightforward, right? But here's the other piece of the puzzle, the one that usually gets treated like a fun fact for trivia night. Our orbit isn't a perfect circle, it's an oval. And there's a point in that orbit called perihelion, and that's the moment our entire planet gets closest to the sun. Right now, that happens in early January.
So think about it. We've got two major planetary rhythms happening every single year. The first one, driven by that axial tilt, gives us the seasons. It's the famous one. We built our entire civilization around it, our holidays, our agriculture, everything. But that second rhythm, the pulse of getting closer to and then farther from the sun, well, we've almost completely ignored.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because that second, ignored rhythm might just be the secret key to unlocking a whole series of strange and seemingly unconnected patterns throughout history, little glitches in the code that the standard story just can't explain.
For starters, let's look at history. Isn't it a little weird that so many huge, ancient spiritual events and festivals all seem to happen in this very narrow window in deep winter? We're talking about the Roman festival of Saturnalia, the traditional date of the Buddha's enlightenment, the birth of Christ, all clustered together. Why then?
Okay, now jump to today, modern medicine. Every single year, like clockwork, doctors see a massive spike in heart attacks and cardiac events. They even call it holiday heart syndrome. It happens right in that same late December, early January window. Is that really just about holiday stress and eating too much? And get this one, a third pattern. Think about the people who literally decoded the universe for us. Johannes Kepler, the guy who figured out our orbits are ellipses. Isaac Newton, who gave us gravity. Charles Babbage, who invented the first computer. All of them were born within 3 days of each other, right at that same peak moment of the year. So you have to ask yourself, right? Ancient religion, modern health crises, and a cluster of scientific geniuses. Are these all just random coincidences? Or is there some invisible thread, some hidden force connecting all of them? This is exactly where the heliocentric theory steps in. It argues, no, it's not a coincidence. It says there is one single key that connects all of these dots. It's about finding that ghost in the machine that our calendar forgot to track. So here's the absolute core of the idea. Our calendar, the one on your wall, is a static map. It keeps March in the spring and September in the fall, period. But that key date, the date of perihelion, isn't static. It drifts very, very slowly. It creeps forward through the calendar. The theory calls this mismatch the precession failure.
And you can actually see this drift over the centuries. Back around 25 AD, perihelion happened in late November. By the year 1246, it had drifted to align perfectly with the winter solstice, December 21st. And today, it's in early January. So those ancient festivals, they were originally synced up with a real physical event that has now moved on. We're celebrating a ghost. And this drift is a really big deal, because perihelion isn't just some date on a chart, it is a massive physical event. When we are at our closest point to the sun, the raw solar energy hitting the Earth goes up by almost 7%. That is a huge surge. And at the exact same time, our planet literally puts the pedal to the metal. We speed up in our orbit by about 1 kilometer per second. That's over 2,200 miles per hour faster than we move at our slowest point. We are hurtling through this section of space.
So the theory completely reframes the whole situation. that feeling of winter chaos, it's not a personal failure. It's not a societal problem. It's the totally predictable biological and social reaction to a massive annual energy spike that our broken calendar just doesn't tell us about anymore.
Okay, but here's the crucial part. For any idea to be considered good science, it has to be more than just a cool story. It has to be testable. It has to be willing to risk being proven completely wrong.
You know, this is what the philosopher of science Karl Popper was all about. He said a theory gets its strength not because it can explain everything, but because it sticks its neck out and makes a specific prediction that you can actually go out and test, one that could fail.
And this theory offers a really simple, elegant test. Here's what you do. You track collective mood, say through social media data or something, in both the northern and southern hemispheres right around perihelion in early January. Now remember, in the north it's deep winter, and in the south it's peak summer. So if you see a spike in energy or anxiety in both hemispheres at the exact same time, you can't blame it on the seasons or a lack of light. It would have to be caused by something the whole planet is experiencing together, something orbital.
And this is so important to get. This is not astrology. It's not asking you to believe anything. It's taking a pattern that we see in history, in biology, in genius, and it's framing it as a concrete, testable scientific hypothesis that is basically begging to be scrutinized.
So, what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, the idea that our calendar might be a broken map, one that might actually be causing some of our systemic stress. Second, that our bodies and minds might be way more tuned into these deep cosmic rhythms than we ever thought. And finally, that this whole idea gives us a new toolkit for thinking, a new way to look for patterns that connect things that seem totally separate. And that really leaves us with this final provocative question. You know, for centuries, our world has tried to separate science from meaning, the clockwork of the universe from the soul. But what happens if we start to bring them back together? What could we discover if we start to look for the rhythm of the cosmos inside ourselves?